Welcome to another deep dive, everyone. Today we're heading to South America in the 16th century, the age of conquistadors. We're going to learn about a lesser-known conquistador. You hear all about Cortés and Pizarro, but have you heard of Sebastián de Belalcázar?
I would say he's not as famous now.
Yeah, but his story is just as crazy and impactful as some of the bigger names. So picture it, it's the 1500s.
Okay.
And we got this young guy from a tiny town in Spain,
Uh-huh.
also called Belalcázar, oddly enough.
Really?
Yeah. What would make someone leave everything they know and sail across an entire ocean to a completely new world?
Well, put yourself in his shoes for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Spain at that time was full of these stories about the Americas, this new world. Gold, glory, adventure.
Mm-hmm.
For someone like Belalcázar, not born into wealth or a noble family, the new world was a chance. A chance to make his fortune and make a name for himself.
It's like the classic go west, young man, but instead of west, it's go across the ocean. So he gets there. What does he actually do?
Now that's where things get really interesting. Belalcázar starts out as a soldier under Francisco Pizarro.
Whoa.
Yeah, during the conquest of the Inca Empire.
So he's right there in the thick of it, seeing an empire fall.
Exactly. Brutal times. Such a clash of cultures and ambitions.
I bet that had a huge impact on him.
Yeah,
It shaped him as a conquistador and a leader.
no doubt about it. And before long, Belalcázar decides to head out on his own. He caught wind of a city up north, full of riches, or so they say.
Oh.
In 1533, he leaves San Miguel de Piura with about 200 Spanish soldiers. And get this, indigenous allies.
Wait, indigenous allies?
Yeah.
I thought they were fighting the indigenous populations.
Yeah, good catch. That brings up a really important point about this period. The Spanish conquest wasn't so straightforward.
Okay.
Just Europeans against everyone else.
Right.
Indigenous groups had their own alliances, rivalries,
Yeah.
Some saw an opportunity with the Spanish to further their own interests.
So it's more complicated than just an invasion?
Much more. A whole web of shifting power and alliances.
Gotcha. So what's this city Belalcázar sets his sights on?
Quito. He gets there, and it's already weakened by Inca infighting.
Oh,
Picture this. He walks into a city in chaos and takes it without a big fight in 1534.
really? He just waltzes in and takes over.
It wasn't that easy, but it was definitely strategic. A lot of the Incas had run off with their treasure before he got there. But listen to this. He doesn't just conquer Quito. He founds what we know as San Francisco de Quito, December 6, 1534.
Wow. So he founds a city that's still around today.
Still standing.
Amazing. But he doesn't stop there, right? I mean, he keeps pushing south.
He does. Driven by the promise of wealth, maybe a bit of restlessness, too, he heads into what's now Colombia. And, you guessed it, keeps conquering and founding cities.
Sounds like he was really on a mission, driven to leave his mark on this new world.
He was. But we're just getting started. Belalcázar's story has plenty more twists and turns. We'll get into all that in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, so Belalcázar's got Quito, and he's heading deeper into South America. It's like every time I turn around, he's founding a new city.
Well, he founded Santiago de Cali in 1536.
And that's another major city in Colombia today.
It is. And even back then, Cali was strategically important. It was like a base for Belalcázar, for launching more expeditions,
So he wasn't just randomly conquering. He was strategically expanding Spanish control.
Exactly. Makes you think, what was driving him?
Yeah, like was it just ambition
Mm-hmm.
or greed for gold?
I mean, those were definitely factors. But you got to remember, the conquistadors, they were products of their time.
Right.
Driven by riches and glory, for sure. But also this belief that they were the superior ones,
Yeah.
Bringing civilization and Christianity. That's how they justified what they were doing.
It's hard to wrap your head around that.
Yeah.
Like spreading civilization while also causing so much violence and upheaval.
Absolutely. And we can't shy away from that. The indigenous people, they suffered tremendously during this period.
Yeah. Their cultures, their way of life were disrupted, sometimes completely destroyed.
It's a tragic part of this story.
So while Belalcázar is busy building cities and expanding Spanish territory, what's happening to the indigenous folks who were already there?
Their stories are important, too, even if they don't get as much attention. A lot of them resisted, fought back hard.
Right.
Well, they were often at a disadvantage, technology and all that. Some formed alliances,
Okay.
sometimes with the Spanish, sometimes against them, just trying to survive in a world that was changing fast.
Sounds chaotic.
It was. And then as Belalcázar heads south, he starts running into other conquistadors. each with their own ambitions.
Oh boy. So now it's conquistador versus conquistador.
You got it. It's one thing to conquer new lands, but fighting your own countrymen, that's a different story.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, Spain wasn't exactly unified back then. There were factions and rivalries. Everyone wanted power.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It was. And it all comes to a head in 1539. Belalcázar meets with two other conquistadors, Gonzalo Jiménez de Quesada, founder of Bogotá, and Nicholas Fetterman, a German working for Spain.
Wow, that's a lot of big personalities in one room.
Oh, yeah. Imagine 3 powerful conquistadors with their armies all meeting on the Cundiboyacense Plateau, all claiming the same land.
Yikes. Sounds like it could have been a Spanish Civil War right there in South America.
Definitely could have. But, get this, they came up with a, well, sort of diplomatic solution.
Really?
They agreed to let the King of Spain decide who got what.
Wow, that's kind of surprising. They were so ambitious, but still loyal to the crown.
It shows you how strong that idea of hierarchy was, even way out there. But we can't forget about the cost of all this.
Yeah, the impact on the indigenous populations.
Millions died. From violence, disease, you name it. A terrible tragedy.
It makes you wonder if Belalcázar ever thought about that. Like, did he ever question what he was doing?
It's tough to say. We don't have his diaries or anything, but we do know that he was fascinated by the legends and rumors of the New World.
Like El Dorado. Wasn't everyone obsessed with finding that city of gold?
You bet. It captured their imagination. They were willing to do anything to find it.
Did Belalcázar ever get close? Did he actually think it existed?
Well, no one's found El Dorado yet, so
Point.
we may never know what he truly believed. Was it a driving force? Or just a cool story? But the allure of wealth, the thrill of adventure, they definitely influenced his actions.
So it's ambition, conquest,
Mhm.
city building, and maybe a little bit of, well, delusion.
Yeah, fueled by these legends. But here's the thing. His story doesn't have a happy ending.
Oh, what happened? Did he get caught in some power struggle?
In a way, his rivalry with another conquistador, Jorge Robledo, turned deadly.
Oh, no.
In 1550, Belalcázar was condemned to death for Robledo's murder.
Wow. All those conquests, all those cities, and he ends up facing execution.
It's ironic, isn't it? The very thing that drove him, ambition, led to his downfall.
It's like a Greek tragedy or something.
Well, it didn't quite go down like that. He died in 1551, before they could carry out the sentence.
Oh.
But still, a pretty dramatic end to a life full of both triumphs and controversies.
It really makes you think. He was a key figure in the conquest. He founded cities. He was incredibly ambitious. But he also caused a lot of suffering.
It's tough to reconcile those two sides of him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how should we remember Belalcázar? Hero, villain, or just a man of his time?
I don't think those simple labels really work.
Yeah, you're right.
He was complicated, capable of great things, but also capable of cruelty.
Right.
A builder and a destroyer. A dreamer and a pragmatist. His story makes us think critically about history, to recognize the good and the bad.
And to remember that history isn't just dates and names. It's about people. Real people with all their flaws and contradictions.
Exactly. And I think that's something we should always keep in mind when we look back at the past.
There's always more to the story.
Always.
You mentioned there's more to explore with Belalcázar. What else is there?
Well, those legends we talked about, they weren't just stories, you know. They really shaped how the conquistadors acted, what drove them.
Like El Dorado. But wasn't that just a distraction?
El Dorado itself might have been a myth, but the idea of it, the promise of all that gold, that fueled their desire to conquer, to explore.
So even if they weren't real, these legends had real consequences.
Exactly. They influenced powerful people like Belalcázar and changed the course of history. And it wasn't just El Dorado either. Remember the story about Rumiñahui hiding treasure?
Yeah.
They say he stashed a huge treasure in the Andes before the Spanish got there. And people are still looking for it today.
Like something out of a movie. Did Belalcázar buy into it? Did he try to find it?
Hard to say for sure what he really believed. But we know he was really interested in indigenous culture, their stories. He probably heard all these legends from the people he met. Maybe he just couldn't resist a good mystery.
I could see that. Imagine being in a totally new place, hearing all these stories about hidden cities and riches. Must have been exciting and kind of scary at the same time.
Absolutely. That feeling of like being caught between two worlds, that comes up a lot with the conquest. You've got these outsiders trying to force their own way of life onto a place they don't really understand.
And that clash of cultures, that fight for power,
Yeah.
it led to amazing things, but also terrible tragedies. Belalcázar's story is kind of a perfect example of that.
Yeah, it's hard to reconcile. He built cities that are still here today, but he also played a part in a system that caused a lot of suffering.
So how do we remember him? Is he a hero? A villain?
I don't think those labels really fit.
Yeah.
He was a complex guy, ambitious, but also capable of cruelty. He built things up and tore things down. He was a dreamer, but also a pragmatist. His story makes us think critically about history, see the gray areas.
And remember that history isn't just facts and dates in a textbook. It's about real people.
Yeah, people who made mistakes, people who did great things, all mixed together.
Well, that's a good place to wrap up, I think. This deep dive into Sebastián de Belalcázar, we've seen his conquests, his cities, his ambitions, and his flaws. It's a fascinating story, a look into a complex and, honestly, often troubling time in history.
A time that still impacts us today.
Definitely. So until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep